In this video, we look at the welfare effects of a negative externality. So what does a negative externality look like on a supply and demand graph? Well, let's start with a regular supply and demand graph like this. And this is going to be the demand. And this is going to be the supply, but it's going to be the supply for private individuals here. It's not going to include the additional costs that an externality imposes on society as a whole. In this case, obviously price would be here and equilibrium quantity would be here. Okay. Now let's have an externality on top of this. Okay. So what this externality does is this externality means that the social cost to society as a whole, or the supply or cost to society, or the social cost, is above the private cost. So there's this additional cost placed upon people on top of what private individuals have. Okay? So what happens in this world is that under private markets, we end up at the private market equilibrium, but where we really want to be is here at the societal equilibrium, where society's costs and benefits are equalized. So let's take a look at how this might occur in reality. So let's imagine we solve this situation here by putting a tax on this good, which leads us to this situation here. So we're going to put a wedge in between what suppliers pay and what demanders get and what suppliers get, right? And what that's going to do there is that's going to internalize the externality. And what we want to do is we want to put a tax just big enough to cover the entire cost of that social cost on top of what private buyers have. So let's take a look at what this looks like. So in this situation here, we have A, and B is going to be that whole area, C, D, E, and F. So normally in this world, what we would have here is we would have consumer surplus before and after, right? So the consumer surplus before we put this tax on is this area above price and below demand. So the consumer surplus was A plus B plus C, but after the imposition of the tax, it's only A. So before, it's A plus B plus C, and after, the consumer surplus is just A, right? Producer surplus before was this area below price and above the supply curve, so it would be D plus E plus F. After the tax, the producer surplus is just the area below this curve here, so it's just the area F. Government revenue being collected here would be B plus D, right? So this is government, and this is B plus D. In this case, normally, if we didn't have an externality here, we would have deadweight loss equal to this area C plus E. Here's the cool thing, though, that happens when we've got an externality, right? So the last important thing with an externality is the externality means that this whole area here, and I'm going to put in one more piece here, G, that whole area there are costs to society that we weren't accounting for beforehand, right? So we've only so far in our analysis here included the private costs and benefits and the private costs and benefits, right? But this whole area here represents costs to society that we have not been considering, that additional external cost, right? And that external cost is equal to G plus C plus E. So the external cost here is that area C plus G plus E, right? So what we have here is, yeah, we have this deadweight loss imposed by the tax, but we have a gain to society of G plus C plus E from avoiding the external cost. Well, this C and E cancel out with this C and E, which leads us to just this area here. This area G here represents a savings from the tax by getting us to avoid the externality. And in fact, there's not a deadweight loss with this tax. There's actually a societal gain by eliminating transactions that should not be happening. And we can actually see it here on the graph, right? The total cost to society of this good is here, and the benefits that the person gets from the good are only here. So this whole area represents a loss. As we move down here, this whole triangle here represents transactions that should not be occurring, but occur because the individual privately doesn't take into account those costs. So unlike a regular tax, which leads to a deadweight loss here and here, a tax on an externality actually eliminates a loss and doesn't end up with any deadweight loss at all. That's exactly like everyone from liberals like Krugman to conservatives like Mankiw are wildly in favor of what are known as pollution taxes or externality taxes or Pigouvian taxes that eliminate externality.